I have my health, my family, and my creativity. So, you know, looking around the world and feeling the current situation, you know, I feel like we have so much to be grateful for. And if you stay present, you know, or when we stay present, and stop comparing, you know, it's easy to see. So.
I can go. I am thankful for partnership and collaboration. In this moment, I think we get to see unlikely allies coming together for a common purpose to help as many people as possible. And one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to this particular conversation, it's definitely bringing out people's creativity. So yeah, I'm thankful.
I'm thankful and grateful for just not having any lack during this situation. Yes, I'm a nurse, but I am a paperwork, desk, clerical nurse. I'm not on the front lines. And I've had, at the beginning of all of this, I had 3 different projects that I was working on. And they quickly went down to one or like sparse work. But you know, I've been very I've had everything that I've needed, and my stress level is not high. You know, because I don't know anybody else's beliefs here, but you know, I believe in God and I trust him, and he's sustained me throughout this, you know, where I have, and there are times that I kind of wonder about certain situations, which I think that's the human part of it. But yeah, everybody's good. My family's good. Life is good. Business is, you know, I'm figuring out ways to do better with business and grow business, or strategize and learn about business and learn to do better with my business and being able to still make an impact. And so I'm grateful for that. That's what I'm grateful for.
Mm. I'm truly grateful to be talking with you all. Just like what Krystina said, I was really looking forward to talk to you, and we will dive deep into your projects. But I think like the kind of impact that you create is the most beautiful way to use creativity. So I'm really grateful that I'm the host for this conversation.
What I'm grateful for is just that mental health it's a huge priority at my job, and it's also become a huge personal priority. And so my own systems that I've developed to attend to my mental health, and then also the reminders from friends that one must not, we don't have to be so productive during these times, that stillness is important. And some days I'm only still when I sleep, but I do try to increase it as often as I can. So I feel like during this time of still great anxiety and stress and fear, that it also has helped me to take a moment and really implement some good habits, good personal habits for myself that I've been wanting to do for a while.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about this. The topic of the conversation was staying creative or getting creative and making an impact. And I wanted to focus first on the impact part, and wanted to ask you, what kind of impact do you think is the most important one we should be focusing on at this moment?
I can go. I think one of the things that we're all combating is a level of hopelessness and not really knowing what it is that we can do. And I think we all have the same 3 things: time, talent, and treasure. And so I think now is really the time to see how you can dedicate one of those things or all of those things in a way that feeds you, but also is contributing to what's going on right now. And when I say time, talent, and treasure, sorry, just to like make it clear, although I see the head nods, you know, we all have time that we can either like donate in person or online. Talent, so we all have a skill, whether it's related to our job, that we can lend to somebody in need. So whether it's like, oh, a nonprofit needs graphic design, or like you speak another language and you can do translation or something. And then treasure is your money. So you can always donate.
Yeah, Krystina, I really believe you kind of covered it in a nutshell. Like you covered everything that we and again, for a lot of people, the mental health portion of it to kind of have an impact on that. And we all touched it in the beginning. Just confirming and letting people know it's okay, like Kamalah said, to not do anything. I'm still trying to struggle and find that. I was just telling my mom the other day that even with the jobs dwindling down, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, so that continues. And I haven't had a point with even being home, just taking that time to say, do nothing. Like I even kind of feel, that's why I said I feel guilty a little bit about doing nothing. Like I'm sitting, finding myself doing nothing. And I'm like, I could be doing this, I could be doing that. There's so much time now to catch up on things that I could have been doing. But like Kamalah said, I believe this is the time to be still, to get back to, that's another impact, to let people know that you're close, you're home with family, to be grateful, for gratitude, to sit home and spend more time with their children, learn more about your children, your family, reach out to different ones, like develop relationships, like kind of build your tribe or your circle of something that will comfort you or be your go-to during this time of uncertainty.
Yes, and so I wanted to add in, for me, and it was kind of leading, it's crazy how just things come together, but leading up to this pandemic in the last, couple of years, I just started to see and grow and recognize how connected we all are. And I feel like this is like this pandemic, right? Coronavirus is the first thing that affects everybody worldwide. And we saw how it flowed from China to California to New York, and now to obviously Europe, Italy. I left out a lot of countries in between, but you can just see how we're so connected, and what happens in China, affects us here in Miami. And, something that they come up with in Italy can affect us here. So to answer your question, Esther, I think everything, like whatever it is that you can focus on, whatever your power, your influence is, it will affect someone in some way. I mean, whether that's graphic design or nursing or photography, or, you own a big business, it's a trickle down effect. And what I've learned is that we're all connected, and anything you can do in positive energy will translate, to affect someone. So that's been I'm grateful for that lesson, even though this is how it manifested.
I would say, I don't know, like a big part of the work that we're doing right now is adjusting how we would do our normal services in this time of social distancing. And, for instance, there's a big push with the Red Cross across the country to donate blood. And so it's a need, it's a thing that's happened, it's a thing that's been impacted that is not top of mind. And so it caused me to think about all of the other parts of our life and society and businesses that have been impacted and shifted, and what can we do to make their lives easier? What can we do to support them? One night I was coming back home, trying to make it before curfew, and I noticed all of the laundromats were closing. And I remembered that when I read the governor's orders, that laundromats are essential business. And I was like, oh, of course, because, hygiene and sanitizing items, and just that, and all of the people that were thanking, I never thought to maybe stop by, thank a person that's staying till 10 o'clock to keep a laundromat open. and then also giving them my business, you know? So not that, you know, I think we have a mountain of things that we have to consider and think about, but when we have a moment and when we notice something, you know, a little thing like stopping by, being really pleasant, and saying thank you and doing nice things for the people who are part of essential work that we don't always think about.
Yeah, beautiful. I would also invite everybody that's watching, what kind of impact do you think is the most important one, the one that we should be focusing on? Because we really want to listen to your opinion. And I know all of you are doing tons of things. Some of you already knew you, some of you have been sneaking. And I wanted to ask you, could you, first of all, I would like to know something that you are doing right now that's creating an impact. And I think that for that, it would be beautiful to know a little bit about either your life or your business, because you could be creating impact in many areas, whether it's work or personal life. So who wants to start? Janine, okay.
I can go.
Yeah.
So I'm a photographer. I do, for 20 years, I have photographed children and family portraits, weddings and events, you know, basically life's, most precious moments, I always say. And, you know, I have a smaller clientele. You know, I give a lot of personal customer service. And like, I think I pride myself in connecting with my clients. And when I'm working with them, I'm touching and holding and, you know, moving and fixing. So this was an obvious, like, you know, you can't touch people. So right when it started, I had some clients, you know, reschedule their portrait sessions. One we canceled because I was actually sick. I had a cold and wasn't sure what it was. And then I had slowly all my spring events started canceling. And, you know, it's where half of my business income comes from. And a lot of them were rescheduling, like big, you know, weddings and bar mitzvahs, life events. And, you know, they were disappointed, and I could see, okay, business is going to be rough for a while. What am I going to do? So I kind of took, like we had talked about in the beginning, I kind of took 2 weeks and rested. And it was like, I think Tyshawn was talking about it before, Krystina, but like, it was this necessary rest, you know, that my, I think, body, my soul was just craving. So in the, you know, in that time of rest, I had also, I had started meditation. I wanted to implement that into my life prior to this. And, you know, I knew I wanted to give back. And we're talking about how we came up with our project, right? Sorry.
You're good.
So it just all kind of came together. I had seen, one of my friends had posted on Facebook, Udonis Haslam's article about feeding South Florida, you know, and it was just such a wonderfully written, moving article. And I was like, I wish I was Udonis Haslam, and I wish I had $1 million to donate, you know, but what the article on him kept pushing was that $1 feeds, I think it's 7 meals. It provides 7 meals. So it kind of, your dollar goes far. And, you know, so on a separate, you know, separately, I was seeing in the photographer community all over the country that photographers were doing these front porch projects. And I was like, oh, well, that's great. And they were charging very little fees. And it was, you know, a good way to keep moving. And I knew I wanted to do that because I wanted to keep moving. I wanted to stay creative. I wanted to stay engaged. And it wasn't until I saw a friend of mine who lives in South Carolina, another photographer friend, post about hers or a project that she had joined that brought in the charity aspects. And I saw that, you know, after doing these meditations that were focused on gratitude, the day's meditation happened to be on, you know, how you can give back to the community, or anything you give will come back to you tenfold, you know, that kind of thing. And it just all came together for me. So I basically started a front porch project, or I call it a portrait of our neighborhood. in South Miami, Pinecrest, the Falls, Palmetto Bay area, close to where I live. And I started offering portrait sessions, and they were for free. I normally have, you know, a higher $350 session fee. And it was just like, hey, let me come over for a donation. So I created a team for Feeding South Florida, and for a donation, I would come and take your pictures, send you a few images. And the idea was just to capture these moments. Like while the weddings, the bar mitzvahs, everything had been canceled, there were still great times going on in every house. So it's went on for 4 weeks. I'm kind of closing it up, but I almost reached my $5,000 goal, which I calculated today. I think the $4,500 provided 31,500 meals. Like if you do, you know, their math. So yeah, it kind of shows like how I didn't have $5,000 to donate personally. You know, I'm worried about my income, my family's income. We're both independent, you know, don't work for a big company. So yeah, it felt really good to give back to the community. And I had said earlier also, not everybody thinks about, oh, what can I do to help? They want to, they're willing to, but they're not taking on a project. So people were so willing, you know, to join in on my project, and they felt good. And it was great to give them that vehicle, like to feel, you know, good that they were doing something themselves. So it's been a blessing. I'm really grateful for, you know, the opportunity, like the experience. It's been really nice.
I think it's amazing. And it's so, it's a kind of a way of thinking, not just about the money, because maybe you don't have the money to give on the first place, but you do have the talent, just like what Krystina was saying. You have the talent, you use it, and then money appears. Right,
exactly. So yeah, it's been fun, and it's been helpful for me, staying creative, staying, you know, present, and working and interacting with people. Most people are shut in their houses, you know, and I get to go out there from 10 feet away and at least wave and have a little conversation. So it's been nice on that level.
Well, congratulations first, because I think it's amazing. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Who else wants to share the story of something that you are doing?
It's that question is sometimes tough to answer. Because, you know, at work, you know, it's absolutely a team effort. You know, a lot of people don't know that the Red Cross is, we're about a 90% volunteer workforce. So almost everybody that anybody's met from the Red Cross is a volunteer. And so the work really happens through them and through our partners. We found ourselves in some really interesting situations because this is an unprecedented event will create some unprecedented issues. And so, you know, there were one thing that people that we do for the public is to help them with health services. So if you lose your medication because of a disaster, home fire is what we respond to most often. Then our nurses can help you with those prescriptions. And so there were a lot of people with diabetes, with hypertension, that got stuck here when all of the borders were closing. And so we found ourselves reaching out to the community, to health centers. It was really hard to ask people who are already putting themselves in harm's way, stretched so thin, to take on this added challenge. But, you know, this is life-saving medication, life-saving services, and people stepped up in a way that, you know, we couldn't figure out how to thank them enough for supporting us and supporting the clients, really, in that situation. And then, you know, I stole a term from my old boss, Daniela Levine Capa, and call myself a compulsive connector. And so it's also been a lot of sort of being a conduit of either information or connecting. You know, I hear there's a resource, and then I heard there was a problem, and then trying to put them together. And so, and also highlighting again, the things that maybe don't get so much attention. So the fact that rural communities, you know, we do have rural communities in South Florida, farming communities, and the resources, the ability to go to a food bank and have the food bank not have run out of food by 2 p.m. Is a thing. And so, just highlighting the needs. And every time I hear of somebody who has a problem, I'm like, that's a program. There's a solution needed, right? And so that's where my entrepreneurial, muscles get flexed, and and then you realize sort of like the root of the issue. So I'll give an example. There was a gentleman in a community, and he had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and was taking care of his mother who was in her 60s. So his children are not school age, so he's out of the loop of hearing that food is being distributed for children at schools. And then he was already disabled before the COVID hit. So he had already been out of work. He had already been struggling to make ends meet. And then also had always just taken care of his mother, and so was out of the loop of the different services that were targeting specific older adults. And so it's like, okay, who are the folks that are still slipping through the cracks? And how can, I amplify that as a need, as a story? Maybe somebody would check on a neighbor. Maybe somebody has a relative that are like, man, I have a cousin that's exactly that situation. Let me reach out to them and make sure that they know where they can get, because also people are very prideful. Mm-hmm. And if you've never been in a situation where you have to ask somebody, you have to tell somebody that you're almost out of food, that's a hard thing to do, even though you're running out of food. And so sometimes we have to ask and not wait for people to ask us what they need. But I mean, creativity is happening all around us. And so I see that it's happening, but that's the only thing that I could speak to, is like, just trying to supply some creative solutions to some of the issues that we're seeing, and then also connecting people to each other.
Yeah, actually, I think that the connecting part it's so important. I mean, I think it's always important, because we tend to forget that we are a collective and that we are part of an ecosystem, and nobody ever can have a life without a care system. Like when you're a baby, when you're sick, when you're old, like everybody, even if you have the best health in the world and have all the money in the world. And in these cases, like reaching out, and I think that's it's a superpower, being able to connect all those resources and the people, and knowing who to call when. Because you are just mentioning, sometimes an issue could be that people are not reaching out for help because not everybody is good at it. And I totally get that pride gets involved. So yeah,
I love that term, Kamalah, the compulsive connector.
Yeah, that's the title that I should have used before to present you. Yeah, I think it's beautiful and super powerful.
I think similar to Kamalah, I found, so one of the ways that I deal with stress and uncertainty is to consume a lot of information. Like, I am a high information person. I read all the things, I listen to all the podcasts. I'm like, I read the medical journal. Like I really do get into the weeds and ask people who I know who are experts in different things. And I found myself just sharing a lot of information, and not just like reposting an article, but actually synthesizing what are the gaps and what are the opportunities, and giving real life examples of like, here's what this means for the average person in XY scenario. And I felt really compelled to do that more for myself, but then just like in response to the frustration of like all of the misinformation that was out there, and just like repeatedly saying that like, we don't know everything, and that's okay. And I think it's a very fine line, right? To think that, oh, well, I read all the things, so I know. And I just really approach it from a perspective of like, I don't know, here are the things that I do know, and here are the questions that we should be asking. And so as the director of the Office of New Americans, I'm really tasked with thinking about the needs of our immigrant community in Miami-Dade County, and seeing what are the particular obstacles for them to achieve full citizenship. And originally, prior to this epidemic, I was focusing on like free legal services and citizenship classes, and thinking about like the tangible process things that immigrants need to become citizens. And I had already been feeling like we're only at like the tail end of the spectrum, and we should be working on issues and programming that people need earlier on, like as soon as people arrive. And I say this because Miami-Dade County is 53% foreign born. So that it is the majority of our community, right? Whether they may be a citizen, whether they may be a tourist, student, or, being on a different kind of visa. And I think there were already many policy changes that were happening that I had to break down for our community, using our various social media platforms and in-person events. And the shift that I had to make was that we know that marginalized communities don't have the luxury of, like, when you're working 2 jobs, to go to an office to then get a consultation with like a lawyer or whatever. People don't have time to do that, because a lot of the services that exist, social services that exist, are between 9 to 5. And if you're working a job from like 7 to 6, or like, and then going to your night shift, when do you have time to do that? And so we had really focused on having events in the community on a regular basis, whether it was at a library, a community center, a church, a synagogue, a temple, whatever it may be, to go to people where they're at in their community on a night or weekend, so that it wasn't in that time frame where they would most likely be at work. And this forced us to speed up our online programming, because we could no longer do that. And so one of the things that has come out of this moment is taking all of the information that's been compiled, and doing an immigrant resource guide, because that is one of the things that is missing in the conversation. While people who are in direct service know that there are needs, like Kamalah, like know that there are individual cases, there actually isn't any kind of overarching one-stop shop for like, oh, I don't qualify for PPP because yes, we have this family restaurant, but like we never paid ourselves payroll. Like everybody always told us to just pay our taxes, which we do, like that, or like the licensing, not about actually paying yourself. Or, one of the things is that if you're married to an immigrant, even though you're a U.S. citizen with U.S. citizen children, you do not qualify for the the stimulus check. So there are literally millions of like more than 1 million families across the country that are entitled to this money, right? Because they were taxpayers and United States citizens, that are not going to get their $1,200 plus however $500 per child. And they were counting on that money. And it's been a month, and now they're realizing through reporting and like advocates explaining to the community that they're never going to get that money. And so that means now they do have to look at food banks and mutual aid funds and emergency assistance in a different way. And so this has really highlighted to me the importance of democratizing information, really, is what I like to call it. Like everybody is entitled to information that will empower them to make decisions for them to be able to survive and thrive. And to constantly be that person to force the conversation of like, hey, what about this group? Like it may be this hypothetical that people don't think about immediately, but I'm constantly bringing up that hypothetical because it's really real for thousands of people in our community.
Yeah, information is such a great, like a big need, especially with something like this that nobody predicted, and suddenly so many people have the same doubt over and over and over again. And I'm sure it's not been the most efficient thing in the world, and also not the most understandable. Not long ago, well, I live in Spain, but I was looking at the information for the grants, and they have this thing, like all these steps, all these procedures that somehow you feel like you are going to do it wrong, and then you have to pay somebody to help you, if you have the money to pay somebody to do it for you. So information is gold in these circumstances. And also, Krystina, you mentioned that you had to move quickly to the online. How's that process going?
So I am still slow at it. And as a digital native, like I use my social media a lot for myself, But for my organization, it's been harder because I feel like the stakes are so high. So I have been reposting a lot of information because I also don't believe in recreating the wheel. It doesn't need to have my logo on it for it to be useful for people. But one of the things that we're doing actually is doing a digital town hall next week, specifically on immigrants and COVID. So that's going to be our first online event, particularly about this. And then we also have information sessions that'll be on Facebook Live and Zoom moving forward.
Good. If somebody listening here is coming up with some questions, please throw them on the comments, because we will be happy to answer them either now or later. So, I mean, these women have lots of information in their heads. So just, I think it would be very good to use all of that. Thank you, Krystina. Okay, what about you?
I would love to first say, by just being the last to follow all of you ladies, it's pretty cool to be on here with all of you all, and just seeing how we touch different parts, or figuring, like, it's very vast of like how we're trying to handle this. And like you're saying, eco care system where we're all kind of, because we are kind of complex human beings, we have different parts to us. If you see me disappearing, I'm taking care of my toddler. So that's the disappearing act that I'm doing. But yeah, I was like, wow, like, what am I actually doing, like, to compare? And I had to kind of dig deep and think. So our original project, as I was explaining to you ladies before we jumped on live, is one that's like close to my heart, where I'm a nurse first, and then I just wanted to it got kind of lost in caring for the patients. If you talk to any nurses now, you see that, you would know that a lot of them are kind of maybe think of themselves as pill pushers. It's all about documentation. It's all about to get paid from the government. I'm not going to name the different areas of it, or even insurances. There's so many background things that you have to do where the patient gets lost. And that's not why I became a nurse. It kind of got further and further away from that, from the patient, from when I initially wanted to do that as a career. So because I love hair first, that's my God-given talent, I believe. And I've been doing it since I was 13. I would talk to my family often about how I can incorporate those two things where I would still be doing what I liked and what I loved for a living, right? And so, of course, just seeing how cancer patients were, and even people who have alopecia, seeing how they were affected mentally with losing their hair and getting that diagnosis of cancer, and all of that being wound up into one thing. Thinking of me using my nursing knowledge, still giving them care, telling them about the diagnosis, still treating them in that way without giving medication, but I get to talk about and care about the person. And I get to make them beautiful, which will help them heal from inward, outwardly. So that was what I was doing prior to. And with all of this coming about, because we make wigs from scratch, and we kind of customize wigs and everything, trying to figure out how can I shift and still be an impact. So, I mean, they're immunocompromised. They can't be out and amongst everybody else. So we developed a mask and a bonnet line to roll out, to be able to provide things for them. And then I also decided to do like little minute tidbits, like Krystina, on social media, where I'm reposting information that from my nursing foundation, that I believe is kind of within the standard of being truthful, because there's so much information being thrown out, and you want people to be knowledgeable and want them to have the truth or real information, or a good foundation of what to follow. So I try to do that. I try to post stories, just post information that would be something relevant, and encouraging words, like little memes or things that will be encouraging to kind of, so I try to hit it from different ways. And I think that's that's how I've decided to pivot or try to have some sort of impact on that community, because they are still, I mean, just like everyone here had a different community that needs something, they're not forgotten about, but I think they're along with that group of people who needs more attention, because they really, I mean, after getting the chemo and being immunosuppressed, it's you're really susceptible to what's going on out here. So that's how I feel like I've pivoted and started to give back.
I'd love to say something to follow up on what Tyshawn was just sharing. It just is one of those things that reinforces like how much people are craving normalcy. Children, when they're out of their routines, lose it. And I think adults are just large children. And so, so just the fact that like you can provide that sense of normalcy, right? People need what they need. And to keep going with that, I think is amazing, because it's just the simplest things, like my roommate loves to cook, and sometimes lunch is just there and I want to like cry. And lunch, I feel like that's a strong reaction to lunch, but it's huge. It's huge. And so just any opportunity to have people feel normal again, I think is just so important. And
I thought it was pretty cool, because that's it really wasn't much of a shift, because that's what we were already doing, but I just needed to see it, for myself, to say, okay, listen, this will work, because everybody was doing masks. I was like, I don't want to do masks. I don't want to jump on the bandwagon. I don't want to do, but then I realized it does go with what you're already doing. And now it will, impact the greater good, as well as continue on with what I'm already doing.
Totally.
And I just wanted to say how honored I am to be amongst you all. I mean, you guys are like everyday heroes.
Right.
And I've always said, I'm not out there curing cancer. I know I'm really important to the people whose images I'm taking and memories I'm saving, but it doesn't have such a huge impact as the Red Cross, being a nurse, community services and outreach, so I'm just happy to be here. I had to come up with a little project to do, but you guys are awesome.
No, but I mean, I think Kamalah was gonna say the same thing. That's how I was just feeling just now. Like, okay, like to be amongst you all, like, what am I really doing? But I mean, you're capturing moments of people's lives. I take a lot of pictures, and sometimes if we're having family events, our family is really big and we get together all the time. But what I realized is what my grandfather used to do. He would always take pictures. And now we could go back and look at those pictures, and you remember, you put yourself back in that moment. So pictures are awesome. Like, people, that's why they pay you what they pay you, because capturing moments that can never be gotten again. Like, I try to be present, but I always when I'm present, like, people go to social media, you see their lives, you see their pictures. I'm not that person. I'm present in the moment. Then after the fact, I'm like, I wish I had a picture or something to remember that moment, because it's gone. You were in it and you have it in your head, but to see it is like, you're like, oh, remember when? So
that's true.
Also, you're documenting history.
You're
documenting history right now.
Well, I wasn't looking for all the positive feedback. I just wanted to compliment you ladies.
Right, Esther, she got it, right?
And how you feel when you see yourself in a picture taken by a good camera.
Wow.
Yeah.
That can be life-changing.
Well, that's true. People do tell me I look horrible in pictures, and I just tell them they haven't had the right photographer yet. So.
Yeah, I also think that in this very moment, on one side, something that we could learn as a society, because as you said, this is affecting us all, and that has some beauty too, is that we've seen who's indispensable at these moments. And it's people that are cleaning, it's people that are cooking and feeding, it's people that are taking care of the sick. And those people are normally women. Those people are normally not the ones that have the highest wages at all. And so on one side, I think it's a way to be more humble and say, okay, they are the ones that when hidden by a pandemic, they are the ones that we need. Also the teachers, like every parent that are homeschooling, they are like, oh my God, we should pay more the teachers. So I think that's super, I think it's a way to change and to shift our minds. And also, and talking as a designer, I realized at some point that I had to step back and just wait to see when I'm needed. But also, and connecting with what you were saying, Krystina, maybe you are a designer and you decide to work with somebody to help translate, summarize, make information visual so people can understand. So it's just making yourself useful beyond ego and beyond what you were doing before, or the idea of what I'm good at, or is I think it's going beyond the talents that you normally think you have, because we all have more. Oh, and we have a comment. Well, somebody highlighted the compulsive connector, so I think they liked it. We need to democratize information. It's so important. Ladies, this is so needed. Thanks for all of you. I see the true sincerity in each of you. Great job. Yeah, I'm enjoying this so much. And time is running out. And I do wanted to ask you, I know you all work with communities. You all, each one of you have your own community. And I know you are really active, but what about creating an impact by mobilizing and engaging a community? How do you do that?
So I think about this all the time because I feel like I'm trying to get people who are not directly impacted to care about people who are directly impacted. I feel like that's my passion. And I think it's action steps, and also like realizing everybody has value. That's why I keep on saying that we all have the same three things. I think everybody can do a little thing that will contribute to the larger collective, and like helping people realize that like they have worth. Like it's not that I'm an expert in this, or only this type of people can contribute something, but we really all can do something, and to give people examples of what those are. So for example, like really quickly, I'm a part of a couple of different community organizations, and we've launched mutual aid funds. And mutual aid funds are like donor circles where you can give as low as like $5 or like $25 a week or whatever it is that you want to give, and it goes to a member of the community, and the recipient of the funds are supposed to pay it forward. So it's not just strictly charity. It's in getting this money, you're committing to identifying somebody else who may need money, or when you have money to like contribute like $25 or fill out the census, or like whatever action item it can be, to again like feel like everybody has something to contribute even when you're in need.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an awesome, program. I'd love to learn more. I've always, I've reconnected recently with like my initial life dream, which was just to tell like untold stories. So I think, my smaller community outreach, what I found along the way was that inside of each home and behind every door, there was like a story. So my plan to extend this further was to like bring those stories out. And even though you just see, a photo of someone standing outside of their home, you don't necessarily know the story about how the children have come from all over the country and they haven't seen each other in so long. And now they're staying with mom and dad and the siblings are all together. And just kind of like telling those stories beyond like what the image, like we were saying before, but what the image represents. Like you just see smiling, happy faces, but there's a story going on behind those doors. So my goal is just to tell the stories, and maybe your stories too, because I feel like those would be pretty powerful.
Janine, have you thought of doing a book
I
like that?
have
That's what
actually.
I saw when you were talking. I was like,
Yes.
that would be so cool to like,
Mhm.
of course you have to get the consent of the
Well,
persons in the
right,
photos, but like just
right.
to have a book with the little stuff, that would be so cool
I
to
know. Well, I actually thought about it after I had already started and I had like an online media consent, but I have reached back out to everyone and said, hey, I'm taking this project a step further and I'm going to be reaching out, asking your story. So yeah, that's like my goal, because this is
That's
like a
amazing.
time, an unprecedented time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I will be reaching out to all of you ladies.
Cool. But I had to think about that question, and most of mine have been impacted by this because they have been mostly uh, congregating situations where there's like a gathering, a gala, or a show, or a walk, or the things that have already been done. Because it's kind of hard to find something that has not been done. Although speaking to you ladies, I was trying to see in my mind. My mind is always going a way that we would be able to do something online that would kind of raise funds, like a relay or something online, or come up with something online. But yeah, we did a launch show that would kind of be able to, like what Janine said, share the stories behind each cancer patient, or what their survival was, or of the caregiver, or of the survivor, because a lot of people will be able to identify with what is going on with, because we're different, but sometimes we're not. And that's how kind of my story began and the business began, because my aunt, as I said, we were speaking, I was coming up with the idea of how to do it, and I have like 8 aunts. 2 have passed away, but I was speaking with my family and talking about it, and one of my aunts would encourage me often about doing this, or coming up with the idea, or launching the idea, and then not knowing, some 10 years later she would be diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And 2 or 3 years later after that, we lost her to it, but then she became the driving force. So she's my story. She's how I engage people and let them know why I do what I do. And the feeling behind it is continuing to share her story. And she was a really awesome person. So I get to tell more about her in situations where it fits.
Tyshawn, I see a collaborative effort in our future. Maybe we can work on something together.
I would love to.
And new projects are coming out from this conversation.
Yeah.
Kamalah, what about you? But I think you know a lot about mobilizing people and working with groups and engaging them. What do you think would be important to have into account?
I would say the thing, because how to put this, I've deployed quite a bit, and so you get to know how these different disasters impact each community, and the personality of the community, and the power structures, etc. And the thing that's missing usually is the trust building aspect, how to help people create relationships and think of themselves as a community of practitioners very quickly. How to try to have a meeting of people who, coming into the room, feel like they have different interests, and taking a moment to level set, to say that let's just all agree that everybody in this room cares about this community. Let's say that everybody in the room is doing all they can and wants to do more, right? And trying to give people a moment of pause to put their listening ears on, to be able to figure out, and how do we work together? How do we fit together? And it's because the people in communities usually are the ones that are staying there, that are invested in the community, So they know what they need, should be engaged in these processes as well, you know?
Sure.
And so I think that's an important part of mobilizing a community. And then also, I've learned that sometimes it's not so much the message, but it's the messenger, right? So when you're thinking about who are the right people to have in the room or who's missing from the room, it's got to be somebody, like, people want to see themselves represented. There are trusted sources of information that should also be there. And, you know, I think sometimes people, it's hard to take a step back, because in this world of, you know, thinking about like your visibility, you know, so you have to be out there, you have to be spreading the word. But sometimes it's more important to let somebody else go forward, and let the work be done through them, you know. So that's an approach that I usually take when in these situations, you know. And sometimes, you know, the Red Cross, you know, the only brand in the world that's more recognized than the Red Cross is like Coca-Cola. And so sometimes we come into a room and people just either assume we're going to take over. But, you know, we have a saying about getting to yes. And yes might be the connecting people together, the right folks with the right resources. Some, you know, we try to make a point where it's like, no, we are here to support you. This is your work. This is your operation. We are going to bring whatever expertise to the table, whatever resources we have. But this is your show, you know? And so taking a step back and changing people's minds about, you know, that role. So that would be what I say. And when I joined the Red Cross, it was just this moment of, you know, we call it like drinking from a fire hose, of just so much information about all of the things that are working, all the organizations at play. And so taking a moment to, or every opportunity really, to educate each other on what each other is doing, what's the role, what's the rationale behind it, what are the laws connected to it, how has it impacted this community, what's been the history of these relationships, what are the things that are in the room before you even get there, and how do you get caught up on those quickly. So you know, just being thoughtful, right? Like sometimes we feel like everything has to happen yesterday, and things deserve a moment, and they deserve like your best approach, and sometimes you need a second to get there.
Thank you. I know we are running out of time, but I want to make one last question that I think can be, it could bring some inspiration to the people, and that is, what do you think, what's the opportunity, the biggest opportunity that you think people have to make an impact and to change things that they think they should be changed? Can you think of one opportunity?
I mean, I can just tell you, I think if people can stay out of fear and stay present, and really like search within them, like there's something there, you know, and they just have to like just be really in touch as to like, what can I do, or how can I help, or who do I know? And, you know, back to, I think it was Krystina who said like the time, talent, and treasure. You know, everybody has something to give, and it's just connecting with that. Yeah.
To piggyback off of Janine, I was gonna say, it's who you know. Think of who you know, who's in your community, who's within your reach. We all have a telephone, cell phone, some sort of connection, and you can reach out to them once a week, twice a week, just checking on people, sharing a nice word of encouragement, being positive. And, you know, even if you don't feel like it, you don't have to talk to them on the phone so they don't hear that you don't feel like it. Copy a meme, like Krystina says. It doesn't need to be recreated. Just steal something from somebody else, repost it. It may make you feel better. So that's what I'm thinking. Like, think of your circle think of positive things to share within your circle, and kind of be present in your circle in a positive way.
Can you imagine if everybody did that? I mean, if this was like that impetus for like everybody to make a small, tiny change, like how much of a change we could make on like a collective. Maybe that's this lesson, you know?
Yeah. You know, looking outside of yourself, not only what you need, like how we're all connected. Like you said there earlier, Janine, that it doesn't matter what your money was, your status was, where you were, what kind of job you had. This has
Right.
impacted us all nationwide. This is the first time.
Worldwide, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that, you know, what your status was before. We are all in the same boat. We are all susceptible. We can all catch it if we don't do what we're supposed to do. But
Right.
if we stick together and kind of unify and link together, we become more powerful, and we can get through it together.
For sure.
Krystina, Kamalah, is there anything you want to share?
I just say do the thing. Like if you're thinking about something, you're like, oh, I don't really know if people really need that, or like, I don't know if I can really do it. I don't have this, just do it. Do it. Like now is the time. Like all we have is time, knock on wood, right? So just do the thing. Don't be worried about if you're going to fail, if people are not going to like it. Just go with your gut.
Yeah. Step out of fear.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, there's a saying sort of when you're preparing for a disaster, you know, like prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And so maybe we could say prepare for the possibilities and hope for the best of those possibilities, you know, because if you have a vision of what you want to happen and the life you want to have, the state of your household, what's going on with your family, that can be one of the possibilities, you know? So that's, you know, if there's power in words and where we can change the words, let's do that as well.
And again, to piggyback off of Kamalah, the possibilities. I foresaw this. I mean, unfortunately, some people are losing their lives and people are getting ill, and it's impacting us in a bad way. But I saw, because I'm more of a glass half full person, I saw the possibilities in the transition of that. When we get on the other side of this, the possibilities of when we get on the other side of this. We just have to weather the rough storm, hold on tight. And when we get on the other side, there's so much more on the other side if you can make it through the storm.
Totally.
Well, ladies, I want to be mindful of your time, but I sincerely say that it's been an honor talking to you. I believe that the world is a better place with you. So yeah, I had to take some deep breaths along the conversation just to absorb everything. So yeah, thank you. And for all of you that are watching, I hope you enjoyed it as much as me. Again, if you want to share anything, even if you are seeing this later, you can just post it and we'll see it and we'll answer it. Also, tomorrow we are back with another topic in lunch break. And if this resonated with you, just know that you can make a donation for the community. Las Comadres is an online community of women. Most of us are entrepreneurs, though not all of us, but as you see, there's a lot of talent and passion and heart. So just leaving it there. Hope you have a beautiful day. Take care and see you around. Bye.
Thank you.